Chapters 18 and 19 today. Not too long, but let's jump right into it. So chapter 17 was the ectothermic vertebrates, and now chapter 18, the endothermic vertebrates. Again, chapters 15 and 16 were invertebrates, and now we're into vertebrates, meaning animals with a notochord or a backbone. Ectothermic, meaning cold-blooded animals, and endothermic, now we're talking about the warm-blooded animals. All right, so endothermic vertebrates, two main categories we have are birds and mammals. So let's get into the class birds. Now, when we talk about class, we're talking about kingdom, phylum, class. Okay, so the kingdom animal, then phylum, talking about different phyla. For example, the phyla we're talking about are the ectothermic vertebrates in chapter 17. In chapter 18, we're talking about the endothermic vertebrates. So then if we go one step farther in our classification system, right, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, that's all from chapter 9. If you forgot that, you can go back and look at it. So this class is the aves. Aves are the birds. And so if you see this, feathers, right? The feather structure is that it has a flat vein and it also has a shaft, right? And the rachis is the shaft within the vein area, whereas the quill is the shaft from the papilla to the vein, all right? Talking about the shaft, we're talking about the part that goes all the way through the feather, right? The flat vein, that is the part of the feather that is soft, okay? And you can break down that shaft into the part that you would hold if you found a feather, the part that you would pick up, right? That is the quill. And then the thinner part, the rachis, is the kind of like the center part of the feather where the soft part is. All right? And so there's two different types of feathers. It's important to know the difference. You have down feathers and contour feathers. Down feathers keep the bird warm because they're warm-blooded animals. They cannot live in cold temperatures, which is why birds fly south in the winter to where the weather is warmer. All right. Now, in the southern hemisphere, birds actually fly north in the winter, again, where the weather is warmer. Contour feathers, these are the feathers that are a little more tough, and they help provide a stiff vein so the bird can fly. Okay, so on the wings you have contour feathers, and in the body you have down feathers. So when you think about like a down comforter, you're talking about a comforter or a bedspread that is full of the feathers that keep birds warm. And so down comforters and down pillows are always more expensive because they come from the feathers of birds. All right, the skeleton of the bird, right? The beak, the top beak is the maxilla and the bottom is the mandible. All right, the wings, just like humans, birds have a humerus, and then extending out a radius in ulna, just like humans. Excuse me, birds have ribs, their legs, femur, just like humans, and then they have a tibiotarsus, right, which we have a tibia and fibia, but their tarsus, meaning their tibia connects to their foot bone, and then a tarsometatarsus, right? Again, connecting their feet bones to their toes, okay? Or their, not their toes, their claws, all right? The system of a bird, right? The digestive system, they use a gizzard, which are little stones that break down food, all right? So when the bird swallows the seed, that seed goes between these small little stones, which crack open the seed, and then mixing it with digestive juices allow the bird to break down this food. Birds, their respiration is through air sacs. Birds are the only animals that use air sacs. These aid in lungs, and this accounts for 75% of the air that's taken in. The other 25% comes from the nostrils of the bird. And the syrinx is what we hear when you hear birds chirping, right? The songs that we hear birds sing. This is This comes from the syrinx. Okay? Different types of birds, some flightless birds. You should know some of them: ostrich, kiwi, penguin, and then birds of prey, meaning that they are, generally carnivorous, and they're looking to eat other animals: vultures, eagles, hawks, falcons. When birds reproduce, they do what's known as courtship, right? And generally, if you're looking at two different birds of the same species, one's male, one's female, the male is generally more pretty because the male's trying to attract the female. If you see ducks, the brown ducks that are just kind of simple looking, those are the female. The boys are green, they might have a green head, a green body, a little more flashy because they need to attract the female. And the reproduction is oviparous, meaning they produce amniotic eggs. All right? Birds do what's known as migration, moving from one place to another. This is for the purpose of constantly living in a warm environment, as I mentioned before. Moving on to mammals. All right, so you should know some characteristics of mammals, but also we're going to learn about some characteristics of primates or erect mammals, which humans are part of. But some just common characteristics of mammals. Mammals breathe air. They are endothermic, of course. We're talking about the endothermic vertebrates. They have a 4-chambered heart. All right, so we talked about amphibians having a 3-chambered heart, fish having a 2-chambered heart. Well, mammals have a 4-chambered heart. All right, they have specialized teeth, meaning different teeth for different functions, produce milk for their young, and they have hair. So, mammals have underhair, which is like insulating, meaning keeping them warm, and then also, guard hair, coarser, longer, and found over the underhair, many times responsible for its color. All right? That's not necessarily all mammals, but that is a quality that mammals do have. Digestion, first of all, the specialized teeth, the incisors are the thin, flat teeth in the front. This is for biting or gnawing. The canines, the rounded, pointed teeth in the front, used for tearing. And then molars in the back for grinding. And this allows mammals to eat not only, leafy foods with their molars, but they can also eat meat because we have incisors, right? And tougher things, allowing us to, break into them with our canine teeth. All right? Respiration and circulatory system. The respiration, the diaphragm separates the lungs from the abdominal organs. The larynx is the voice box, and hibernation is slowing of the heart, metabolism, and body organs to escape and survive low temperatures. If you think about the diaphragm, not only does it separate, but it's a muscle. As the diaphragm contracts, the air is allowed into the lungs, and then as the diaphragm relaxes, air is allowed in, and then as it contracts, air is pushed out. Okay? As that air is pushed out, the larynx allows that air to make noise. And this is how mammals make noises. And as humans, this is how we speak. The circulatory system, simply in this 4-chambered heart, it goes from one chamber of the heart to the lungs, okay? And then it comes back to the heart, received in one chamber, then filtered to another chamber, and then pumped throughout the body, giving oxygen to all the parts of the body, picking up carbon dioxide, and then coming back to the heart into a new chamber, which will then get pushed to a second chamber, and then the process will repeat and go to the lungs. All right, so that's the circulatory system of mammals in their 4-chambered heart. Animals respond to stimuli, right? In response, also, using their brain. This is what controls the animal's response, whether it's a learned response or a learned behavior, or it's just a instinct, or whether it's a reflex. All right. The cerebrum is the center of intellect and instinct, guides the mammalian brain. All right. That is a piece of the brain, as we learned previously in this section of chapters. Reproduction, the placenta, this is for mammals, nurture a mammal's young, interface between the mother and the developing offspring, all right? So the placenta is this sac of blood, right, that the mom, if you will, nutrients are sent to the placenta, which then are then sent to the young inside the female. Process of reproduction is that periodically ova, which are eggs, are produced by the female, and they move toward a tubular passage called the uterus. All right, the uterus is a muscular chamber where the young develop, and the estrus is the period of heat where males are attracted. All right, so during the estrus, a male might be attracted to the female, and during the estrus, this is when the ova are being produced. Okay, if a male and a female mammal have come together, and the sperm fertilizes the ova, then it will then move down the chamber to the uterus, all right, and that is where the placenta will form, and connected to the new ova, the young will grow, all right. If that egg is not, or that ova is not fertilized, then the inner lining will shed, and in humans we think of this as a period. Okay? Continuing reproduction, you have there, once the ovum is fertilized, it receives nutrients through the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is blood vessels and membranes formed to supply oxygen and nutrients to the young. All right? Gestation is that period that the mammal is pregnant. All right, and that's different for each mammal. For humans, for bears, whatever. All mammals is different. Whales. All right, and mammary glands produced in order to supply milk to the young. All right. Other types of mammals that have different reproduction styles, like marsupials. These are pouched mammals. All right, and then monotremes, egg-laying mammals, which are such as the duck-billed platypus. All right. Some of the mammal orders. All right. The Rodentia. These are gnawing mammals. This is the largest mammalia order, and we see a lot of these around the city in terms of rats, mice. I had an encounter with a pretty large raccoon last night in my backyard. So, all part of the order Rodentia, order Carnivoria. Meat-eating mammals, right? The cats, they use stealth to stalk their prey. Bears, these are the largest land carnivores. They use their strength. And dogs use endurance and teamwork. All right. Another order, Pinnipedia. These are the fin-footed mammals, seals, sea lions, walruses. These come ashore onto land. They do need air. Order Cetacea, aquatic mammals, fish like whales, dolphins, and these, however, do not come ashore. All right, moving on to the order primates. All right, so a couple characteristics you should know about primates, because these are the erect mammals, and humans, of course, are a part of the order primates. They have freely moving arms and legs with large hands and feet. Opposable thumbs for grasping. What does that mean? That means that the thumb can move in a circular motion. Okay, so that the thumb is on the side of the hand. It is not like one of the other fingers just sticking out. Whereas if you think about like your feet do not have an opposable thumb, or your big toe is not opposable, meaning you cannot grasp anything on your feet. Nails on most fingers and toes. Forward-facing eyes, giving us a binocular, bi meaning two, binocular vision, which gives you depth perception, right? A poor sense of smell, ability to walk erect when on land, tendency to be social, meaning that we live in groups, less specialized teeth than other mammals, okay? And then mostly a vegetarian diet with occasional eggs, insects, and other small animals. All right. Quickly moving other orders, the odd-toed ungulates, like rhinos, the even-toed ungulates, like deer, horse, giraffe, And then toothless mammals, anteaters, armadillo, flying mammals, bats, insect-eating mammals, shrews, moles, and hedgehogs, sea cows, manatees, and the trunk mammals, elephants. All right, so those are all mammals. It's a large order, and a large class, and those are all different orders among the class of mammals. All right, chapter 19, quickly, only a few slides here. It's important though. Ecology is the study of the relationship between an organism and its environment. All right, we've had a lot of, ecology has gained a lot of popularity and grown in the last 10 or 15 years. You have a lot of groups organizing to defend nature, okay, which of course is a good thing. The role of ecology is the study of relationships to predict the effects of change and recommend steps to restore or change the organism or environment. Now, one of the only problems that I do have with certain ecologists or people who are looking to help the environment is, in terms of predicting the effects of change, is they get a little over the top and dramatic, saying that the world will destroy itself in 2 years, right? So they come up with these predictions, and of course the Earth is not destroyed in 2 years. So the only issue I have is a little bit, sometimes they get a little over dramatic, but it is important to, recommend steps to restore and change the environment for the better. Okay, and we should all be happy to be a part of that change. Okay, different factors that affect the environment. You have abiotic, meaning non-living factors, radiation, wind, water, rotation of the earth, gravity, fire, right? These are all non-living factors. And then biotic, bio meaning life. These are living factors. These are producers and consumers. Producers, by producers we mean plants, right? Or certain animals that are eaten by larger animals. And then you have consumers, animals that eat plants and animals that eat other animals. Okay? Important to know the water cycle. Okay, so transpiration. We learned about transpiration cohesion theory, but transpiration happens as water is taken from the ground through the roots and out the leaves into the atmosphere. So the gases that are released through the stroma of the leaves go up into the atmosphere, right? And also as water is warmed, or the top of water is evaporated from rivers, lakes, and oceans, it also moves up into the atmosphere. So all this water is constantly going up into the atmosphere when there's higher temperatures, all right? And as that water in the cloud, as the water goes up into the atmosphere, it becomes clouds, all right, which is just big, water gatherings up in the sky. And as that water gets too heavy, as there's too much water in that cloud, or as the water moves to a cooler area, the water condenses and becomes or the gas water condenses and becomes liquid. All right. Then once it becomes liquid, it falls. We call this precipitation. And then it returns to rivers, lakes, and oceans. And then the water cycle repeats itself. That's why we call it a cycle. So biotic factors, we have producers, autotrophic organisms. These are organisms that produce food. Autotrophic meaning that they do photosynthesis to create their own food. And then we have different types of consumers: primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. Primary consumers, these are those that eat plants. Secondary consumers are those that eat bugs and insects or other animals that eat plants. And then tertiary are animals that eat those animals. Okay? So the food chain is basically just the nutritional relationship between organisms and its ecosystem, meaning the primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers in a specific ecosystem. All right? The biosphere is basically contains all known living things, everything included. Limiting factors, these are those that limit the growth or existence of an organism, right? And let's look at man's part in the biosphere. As a consumer, right? We are not producers. We don't produce food. We don't exhibit photosynthesis. But as a consumer, we consume from the food chain, whether we're consuming producers, like as a primary consumer, or as a secondary or even tertiary consumer. Okay? Man is also as a manager. Okay? We can manage our environment in a sense that we can hunt for animals or we can let the animals live. Okay, right now there's a project where they are trying to restore wolves into the natural environment in America because they didn't, many of them were hunted and killed in our early history, and so now they're trying to restore wolves into um, the natural life of in our country, right, out in the wild. And so that is an example of man being a manager of the environment, okay, trying to bring back a species that was, if you will, overhunted. All right, so moving on to pollutants. Different types of pollutants. There's energy pollutants and substance pollutants. Energy meaning heat, light, sound, and nuclear energy. All these affect the environment in a negative way, makes it a pollutant. If it doesn't affect it in a negative way, it's not a pollutant. Substance pollutants, these are objects or chemicals that are placed or released in the environment. And there's two types of these substance pollutants. The good ones, we call them biodegradable. Why? Because the environment can naturally break these down and put them into the normal cycle. So they can use them in the cycle of life, all right? Going back into the ground, giving nitrogen and other sorts of minerals into the ground. However, non-biodegradable pollutants, these are those that the environment cannot break down into the normal cycle and therefore will just remain in the in the environment wherever it is. So things like styrofoam, plastics, these, certain plastics are not biodegradable. So if you leave them at the beach or you leave them, at the lake, however, they will, cause problems because the environment cannot break them down. All right, so that's chapter 19, actually 18 and 19. It's important to know the characteristics of mammals. It's also important to know the characteristics of warm-blooded animals and the different parts of the bird, as well as the different aspects of the ecosystem and our environment, and how we as humans can be proactive in helping to not be the problem in terms of throwing out pollutants, especially non-biodegradable pollutants, and also understanding how the energy that we use can also be a pollutant to the environment. And something that we're seeing is the air quality improve here in LA now that we haven't been driving as much. All right, so you can kind of see how man has a part in the pollution. Okay, and so just know what you're contributing and be mindful of it. And wherever you can, try not to produce as much, heat, light, and save that energy so you're not polluting the atmosphere. All right. Talk to you guys soon.